Hey, what's happening everyone? This video is part of the Tekken 7 Basic Lesson Series, and it is about your buttons. We'll take a look at what your buttons do and how they're designed to work in this game, as well as the notation for these buttons, and a couple little tricks that'll help you down the road. So, without further ado, let's get started. Tekken was created in the dawn of time with 4 buttons in mind. Those 4 buttons are a left punch, a right punch, a left kick, and a right kick. This is the way it's always been, the only exception being a 5th button to tag in your character in the 2 tag games. These 4 buttons control the 4 limbs of your character. So every time you press the right kick button, the character uses their right leg to kick. There are a few exceptions here and there, but for the most part, this is the way that it's designed. Left punch, your character always punches with your left hand. All the characters are right-handed by default. You know, their left hand, their left foot is forward, and the right side of their body is to the rear. Some characters can fight, back turn, etc., but everyone's default stance is like this. They're all right-handed by default. So your left hand is always your lead jab hand, and your right hand is the heavier punch. Now, we refer to these buttons as numbers, mainly because it's easier to communicate that without language. Everybody gets used to 1, 2, 3, and 4, which is what you see here. 1 is left punch, 2 is right punch, 3 is left kick, 4 is right kick. This is pretty universal everywhere except Japan, where they use numbers for directions, but that's a different story. So it becomes much easier to refer to these things as 1, 2, 3, 4 than it is to consistently say left punch, right punch. And for me, to learn like the usefulness of all of these helps to associate it with what they mean. When you see 1, 2 all day, you're talking about this. 1, 2, left punch, right punch. And this is just a trick that boxers train with for years. When they're sitting there fighting against, the heavy bag, they just go 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Throw that jab and a hook, whatever it is. Hit people with the old 1, 2 is all you're really looking for. You throw out jabs, and you hit them with the 2. So I feel like that helped me kind of associate the two of them together, is your left jab and your right punch is the old 1, 2. So kind of get used to that in your mind, just alternating punches, left, right, 1, 2, 1, 2. And it'll become common, you won't even think twice about it. You'll think 2 instantly when it comes to right punches. Another thing that often helps is the color scheme. You can see the command history down on the bottom has them as blue for left punch and yellow for right punch. These are Xbox colors. PlayStation are different, but I also feel like that helps to kind of stick it in your memory. I grew up in the PlayStation era, so these buttons are a different color for me, but subconsciously I feel like I think of these buttons. When I see this jab uppercut combo, I don't necessarily think about it as 1, 2, I think about it as pink-green. It's just kind of like a mnemonic that your brain uses to stick information to. So when you get used to seeing these things as colors in the move list, and you see them as numbers in your head, oh, this is 1, 2, 4, or this is 1, 2, 3, I think it all just becomes connected and all becomes automatic. So 1, 2, 3, 4 is the numeric system that covers everything. This just really helps everybody with communication. So when you describe to somebody, oh, what was that? Oh, that was 3, 1. It's just much simpler and it's much quicker. There's no confusion about it. Everybody knows what 3 stands for. You don't have to say left kick and process, you know what I mean? It's just quicker. Quicker, more convenient, universal, language agnostic. Outside of Japan. Most of the moves in Tekken rely on just the use of your basic 4 limbs and other directions. You can see all of these moves that have the arrow in front of them to the right. All of these are just saying press forward and this button at the same time. Demon Slayer is a forward and a 2. You just press 2 by itself, you get a 2 jab, but if you press forward 2, you get Demon Slayer. So that's the vast majority of moves in Tekken, are just a different direction and that particular button. Forward 2 looks like this. Down forward 2 looks like this. Down 2, etc., etc. All the different directions, back 2 is this thing. All the different directions just change what your button does. Since you only have 4 limbs and 100-something different moves, this is how you accomplish that. Every time you press a different direction, you get something different out. So that's the bulk of your moveset, is just different directions combined with the buttons at the same time. Other way to form attacks are button sequences that we call strings. If you look at jab uppercut that we talked about, the old 1, 2, you can see that there are third hits here. This string is 1, 2, 3, and this is 1, 2, 4. So all you have to do is just press 1, 2, and 3. Press all 3 buttons in a row. You can see she does a back spinning left kick, I press 1, 2, 4, she does the front toe kick. Now, for the most part, you can just input the buttons as freely as you want to and it'll come out. Some strings have delays. You can wait a little bit on a certain hit. Some strings you have to put in very, very fast, but for the most part, you can just kind of glide through this. If you can hear my controller buttons, you can hear all I did was just 1, 2, 4, and the whole string will come out. There are variations on this, but by and large, you just input the buttons in that order, and that's what you will get. These are called strings, and all they represent is a string of one attack into another. Obviously, this is different than if I just pressed 1, and then 2, and then 4. When I press 1, 2, 4 as a whole string, I get a completely different attack. So, as I said, all of these correspond to an individual limb of your character. All left punches, every time you press 1, will be a left punch. There are combinations of buttons now where you can press both punches together. For example, this is 1 plus 2. You press the 1 and the 2 button together at the same time, and she hits you with this 2-hand palm strike. Most characters are going to have things like this. They'll be like double hammer fist punches or big drop kicks. With Asuka, when you do 3 plus 4, you get the same thing. She flips over and hits you with both feet, bang bang, real quick. They're not at the same time, but they're 2 hits in rapid succession. So when you press 3 plus 4, she kicks you with both feet. This is down 3 plus 4. She kicks you with both feet, bang bang, almost immediately. So whenever you press 2 buttons at the same time, you're generally going to get 2 punches or 2 kicks out of your attacks. So most characters have things like this, and the way that you would write it would be 1 plus 2, even though you see in the command history it just has them both lit up at the same time. When you're writing this in numbers and letters, you're just going to write 1 plus 2. 1, 2 punches, you'd write as 1 comma 2, and together you'd write as 1 plus 2. So we looked at combinations of buttons that use both limbs at the same time, and we looked at sequence of buttons that string attacks together. And we talked about also you can't really do consecutive left attacks. You can't really punch with your left hand and kick with your left foot at the same time. You would generally fall over. So what happens when you press those buttons? You get throws. 1 plus 3 and 2 plus 4 are your throws. You can see the command list down the bottom. 1 plus 3 is that throw, and then 2 plus 4 is this throw. So 1 plus 3 is what we call a left throw, 2 plus 4 is a right throw. You'll notice that this 2 plus 4 throw changes positions. We end up on the opposite sides from where we were. But the key here is the fact that I press the 2 left buttons or the 2 right buttons to initiate the throw. So when I press the 2 left buttons together, 1 plus 3, you can see, let me get her away from the numbers. You can see she grabs with her left hand. Her left hand, her lead jab hand is the one that reaches out and grabs you. But if I press the other 2, I press 2 plus 4, you can see her weight shifts and she leans forward with her right hand. Her right hand is what grabs you first. Now this is very important in Tekken because this is how you break the throw. In Tekken 7, they changed it, so as long as you press either punch button, you can break these generic throws. But it's still important to learn how to do this in general throw breaking, that you see the left punch and the right punch throw have different animations. So when she grabs you with the left hand forward grab, you press your left punch to break this throw. And if she grabs you with the right hand forward grab, you press your right punch to break that throw. And as I said, Tekken 7 made it so it's either punch. They made it slightly easier, but then you see situations like this. She grabs you with both hands. This is what we call a command throw, an input that's different than the generic throws. These generic left and generic right throws, everybody has those. And that pressing either punch button to break it applies to those, but nothing else. Any other command throw where you have to input a certain sequence, this is back plus 1 plus 2 together, for example. All of these throws, you have to break the exact right buttons. And you can see she grabs you with both hands here. And so in order to break, you have to press both of your punches. You press 1 plus 2 in order to break this throw. So all command throws are like that. Whatever hand they grab you with is the hand that you have to press in order to break it. Because in theory, this is always fast enough that you could see what it is and break it. You should, at a high level, be able to break 100% of throws. This throw is like 15 frames to start up, and you have like 10 more frames to input the escape. That should be enough time to recognize, oh, that was their left hand, let me press 1 and break. So good players can break 100% of throws. So in that world, being a grappler would be useless. There'd be no point in throws if they're always going to get broken. So the kings have several throws where the break is not as it seems. You actually do have to guess. But notwithstanding every other character, once you learn to see, oh, two hands, I press both of my hands. I see a left hand, I press my left hand. That's how that works. So the other combination of two simultaneous button presses leave us with 2 plus 3 or 1 plus 4. And if you look at your controller or your stick, you can see that these are opposite each other, and these are very hard to press, especially on a conventional controller with your thumb. It's almost impossible to press these two buttons together sometimes, so they gave them a limited role. These generally don't do a lot for most characters in this game. They only show up in a couple places when they just needed some other input because forward 1 plus 2, down 1 plus 2, back 1 plus 2 were taken. They'd do something else. You can always map these to other buttons like R1 and L2 and stuff like that to make them useful, but for the most part, 2 plus 3 and 1 plus 4 are usually a limited usage. Asuka happens to have them. Her 2 plus 3 is this. And this still follows the rule of using two limbs. It's kind of hard to notice exactly what she's doing, but she throws her right hand up before the spin kick. This actually parries punches. If you try to punch her during this, her right hand will swat your punch away, and then she'll kick you. So she's actually, this is a two-limb attack. They just found 2 plus 3 was the best place to put this. She also has a 1 plus 4, which looks like that. A low right kick and a left jab in very quick succession. She spins all the way around, and she hits you with both limbs. And like I said, these aren't super common, but they do exist. These also get used for gimmicky attacks, like unblockables. Most characters have a long, wind-up, glowy, unblockable move that takes 3 minutes. These are used on those buttons. They had nothing else to do. It's just a throwback to the old games. Big charge-up, unblockable moves. Use these buttons because these buttons are also rare. So that's every way to press single buttons or to press two buttons together. Pressing 3 buttons together does exist for a few characters, but not a lot. These are generally assigned to taunts, which are something you're never ever really going to use. Let me switch to Heihachi and I'll show you what that looks like. All he does is stand there and glow. He just glows and growls at you. This is 2 plus 3 plus 4, all at the same time. It's not on the command list because he's not me, but all I'm doing is 3 buttons at the same time. I'll show you on his command list exactly what this looks like. Right there. All it is just a taunt. It's nothing more than that. He just glows and taunts you. Brian Fury has a taunt that's a little bit different than the rest of the cast, as you will come to learn. His is actually a useful move in some cases, but for the most part, these taunts are just there just to have them. So that's why they're 3 button presses. They're hard to do and they're not practical, but they exist. So you can stop glowing now. Thank you. So all that leaves then is what happens when you press all 4 buttons together. If you press 4 buttons, you do this. Your character taunts, but they also end up with these glowy hands. We call this key charging. Every character can do this. Some characters have a couple of extra ways to do it, but everybody can do this by pressing all 4 buttons together. So how this is different from a regular taunt is once I'm in this key charge state, the next time either of us gets hit, it will be a counter hit. If you notice, my regular standing forward kick just does this, right? Slaps him in the face and moves on. When I'm key charged and it's a counter hit, it knocks him up into the air, and I get follow-ups for that. Stuff like that. That's a basic tenet of Tekken, is the idea of counter hits giving you extra properties. You get whole combos, you get follow-ups, they get knocked down, whatever it might be. Counter hits are very important. So when you're in this state, my hands are glowing, the next thing I do will be a counter hit. Conversely, if they hit me, it will be a counter hit as well for them. So it's kind of a double-edged sword. If they hit me first, I take the counter hit and am vulnerable to tons of damage. So, not only that, the other drawback to doing this key charge is, as long as my hands are glowing, I cannot block at all. No blocking whatsoever. So they just run up and hit me. They get a free counter hit. So the only time you would ever want to do this is if you have a dirty trick up your sleeve and you know you can catch them before they can catch you. A good example of this I'll show you right here with Asuka is these can kicks. Down 3 plus 4. You notice Heihachi can block this. He gets hit by the low kick, but he blocks the high. He's none the worse for wear. This is not a natural combo, as they call it. But on counter hit, Watch what happens. He gets launched into the air. On counter hit, when this low connects as a counter hit, both hits connect and they get launched for it. Since this is a very fast low, no one can see it coming, you just have to anticipate it. So if I knock you down or whatever and I key charge up and I run up in your face and do that, if that hits you, you get launched. You have no defense against that. You had to anticipate what I was going to do. Needless to say, this is very, very gimmicky and you're not going to see this all the time. It's a very show-off technique. If someone key charges in a match, it's pretty hamming it up, you know? They're not going to do this for smart reasons. They're trying to pull some little dirty trick and catch you off guard. But it does exist. It can be kind of cool when stuff like that does happen. So pressing all 4 buttons leads you to a key charge state. Counter hits for everybody. You can't block. Something's about to happen. Or you could just, run around until it wears off and then everything goes back to normal. So the last thing I want to talk about is what we call button buffering. It's a method to ensure your inputs come out more cleanly and you don't have to be ultra precise with everything that you do. This also applies to directions and not just buttons. For example, if I just press 1, you see this regular jab, correct? Regular jab. But if I press back +1, I get this low back fist, right? And as we said, 99% of all your moves result from pressing a direction and a button at the same time. Back +1, back +1. Well, look what happens if I just hold back. I just pressed and held back and I'm walking backwards forever, and I press 1, I get my back +1. Because as long as I'm holding a direction or a button, if you press or do anything else, it registers the button you're holding as being pressed again. You can see that in the move list, that down in the command history. That first arrow is me holding back and walking. The second arrow reactivated when I pressed the 1 button. That's basically all that is. So you'll get back inputs. If you just hold back and I press 3, I get a back 3 input. You don't actually have to press back +3 in that situation. So that can sometimes backfire. If you're blocking, if you're holding back to block and you want to press 1, you have to let go of block first, because if you continue to hold block, you'll get a back 1, which is a different move. So keep that in mind when you're holding directions. As long as you're holding the direction, you'll get the direction included in whatever buttons you press from there. This is more practical to actually use when it comes to buttons rather than directions. Directions exist, but buttons is how you really take advantage of this technique. You can see how that works out in the open. I pressed 1, and now I'm holding that 1 button in. So all I have to do is press 2. There comes my 1 + 2 attack. That 1 button got reactivated, so to speak. The best example I have to show you is this move here called Basho's Dance. You can see the string sequence. It's 2, 1, 1 + 2 together. Looks like that. Now if you look at that with a single thumb on a controller, that can be kind of hard to do. 2, 1, 1 + 2 all together in sequence like that can be a little bit tricky. And obviously with practice you'll get used to everything in time, but sometimes if you press that just a little bit off axis, you don't get them together and the 1 + 2 doesn't come out and you get something entirely different. You don't want that to happen in the middle of the match. You never want to get a different attack that you did not plan for. If I get a clean sidestep and I want to tag you with this move, if I didn't press them together and I get a 1-2 instead, that's wasted. If I wanted 1 + 2 and 1, 2 comes out, terrible. You don't want that to happen. So if you look at Basho's Dance again, what do you see here? You see that the 1 input, the second move, the 1, is also included in the third hit. If we were to hold that 1, all you have to do is press 2. So instead of 3 separate inputs, instead of pressing 2, and then 1, and then 1 + 2, you press 2, then press 1, and hold that 1. So all you have to do at that point is press the 2. There's no fear of you pressing the 1 + 2 together at incorrect times or your fingers slipping or anything like that. Listen to what it sounds like. You'll just hear 3 taps. The middle tap, I held the 1 in and I just had to tap 2. There's almost no way to screw that up. As long as you keep holding the 1 counts. And then you can just press 2 100 times and it comes out. So the idea that you holding in a button allows you to prep it up for the next button. There are more advanced applications of this too, to try to trick the game into doing something that you don't have. But for the most part, all you really want to worry about is the idea of button buffering. It makes strings like that significantly easier to do. Every time you start doing this, you're just going to hold the 1. Whenever you throw this string out, you're just subconsciously going to start holding that 1. And if you decide to finish it off, all you got to do is tap 2. Makes it much, much easier. So that's the basics of button inputs in this game. Single buttons correspond to single limbs, and every time you press one, your character strikes with that limb. You can press 2 together to do double palm strikes or quick double kicks, for example. You can press the buttons in sequence and get what we call strings. Attacks that come out all in a row that you normally wouldn't be able to do by just doing them individually. We have throws, a left throw and a right throw. And your character's left hand or right hand is how you defend yourself from these throws. 2 plus 3 and 1 plus 4 are a little more uncommon, but they are still the same idea. They're 2 buttons together that allow you to strike with 2 simultaneous limbs. Their just difficulty to input makes them less prevalent in your character's move list. Some characters have taunts by pressing 3 buttons. Read Brian Fury. Go check out, just go to the internet and type Brian Fury taunt. If you're new to this game, you'll be blown away. The dirty stuff he can do with his taunt, but he's like the only character that can do that. Nobody else has taunts. They're just purely cosmetic. They don't do anything. All 4 buttons gives you this key charge technique, which is almost as gimmicky, but does have some uses. Smart players can find a way to really mess you up, but it's ultra risky and it's mainly just for show. And then finally we talked about button buffering. The idea that anything you hold in this game, a button or a direction, will count whenever you press something else. You can hold it in and not have to worry about pressing it correctly. Just press the next thing in line, so to speak. So I hope that covered the basic concept of what your buttons are and the notation. And I can't stress enough how important it is to just get used to the notation 1, 2, 3, 4. Once this is subconscious in your mind, it makes it so much easier to recall information as just 3, 1, 2, 2, 2, 4, whatever they might be. Especially when it comes to communicating with others or in chat rooms and stuff like that. So this is a pretty basic understanding. This is how all your buttons work, your attacks. This is just the very, very beginning. There's so much more to the game, the idea of moving around, the actual built-in mechanics. This is just how to get basic attacks. So once you understand what these work, how these work, and you get to learn a little bit of your particular character's unique ones, what happens when you press back 2 versus regular 2, that's how you learn. You know, that's the way you build a character, is you start to memorize all the different options they have with these buttons. The rest of it is how you start to play the game. So hopefully this was a good intro. There's a link in the description to the rest of the playlist concerning things like movement and hit levels and blocking and stuff like that. So go check all of those out. And elsewhere in my channel, you can find full-length 2-hour character guides. So when you think you're ready to jump in, you can start learning little by little. And the more you learn, the better you'll get at the game ultimately, but pace yourself. You don't have to learn everything in a day. You just have to be comfortable with doing what you already know how to do. So that's why these are all here, and they're time-stamped and bookmarked. Learn as you see fit, and then come back to the next lesson whenever you're ready. So hopefully I will see you here for that next lesson, and I'll catch you next time. Later.